My journey as a cross-country runner began probably when I was a young kid. My parents were always focused on keeping us active and having us go outdoors to play or cross-country ski. So I think I always kind of had an appreciation for the active lifestyle and for pushing my body. I didn't actually start running until my dad encouraged me to get into it. He was training for a marathon, the Hartford Marathon in Connecticut, I think in 2011, and kind of just asked me like, hey, do you want to tag along for a few training runs? And I did, and I kind of quickly learned that I had some talent as a runner, and it just became this passion that was nurtured over time.
Alex, Thomas, Stanford, and Howard, you guys are going to shoot for overall mile time?
I think as with any sport at a high level, the mental side of the sport becomes very, very important at high levels. Being able to keep your composure and to navigate through discomfort is especially important in cross country. The reality is that when you toe the line knowing that you're going to push your body as hard as it possibly can go on that day. When you get to halfway through, 3/4 through a race, your mind is trying to will you onwards, but the pain is kind of occupying your mind more and more, and your legs are starting to burn, you're starting to breathe really, really heavy. So it's this constant battle between the body and the mind. I've learned to have a calm conversation with myself when those moments come, those inflection points in the race, where you just need to reassure yourself that you're okay, and you need to just hunker down and latch onto a pack or put in a move. Ultimately, dealing with that discomfort is challenging, but I think it's one of the most rewarding parts of our sport. This relationship with discomfort and pain that you have to develop as a runner is it can be challenging at times, but it's quite necessary to maximize your ability. I came into Stanford relatively undecided. I didn't have much of a passion for any particular major, and human biology kind of caught my eye. I started more broad, but then I ultimately realized over time my true passion lied at the intersection of biology and human performance, and learning about how the body can adapt to stress and adapt to the demands of exercise. So it was a very natural fit ultimately when I chose at the end of my sophomore year to focus specifically on human performance with an emphasis on exercise physiology. And I was fortunate enough to have a faculty mentor, Ann Friedlander, who's a prominent exercise physiologist in the field, to kind of guide me on that journey. And she's given me so many wonderful opportunities to learn from her. So it's been fun to learn the material deeply, to understand how what I do on a daily basis in practice is changing my own physiology, having small conversations with teammates. And I think ultimately what I want to do with this knowledge is either someday go into coaching or mentoring so that I can apply the knowledge to enhance the lives of other athletes, particularly young athletes who want to get the most out of themselves and understand the same things that I've learned.
Come on, Alex! Let's go! Come on, Stanford! Let's go!
The journey I went through with my heart was quite unique and interesting. It's not something that happens to most 21-year-olds. It really was a process that it took me a lot of uncertainty and doubt to actually figure out what was going on from the end of 2017, early 2018. January, February, all the way through July when I got the procedure done. What was happening was that I, kind of out of the blue, this had never happened to me before, I was getting heart palpitations during workouts, and it was quite unsettling, although it was something that the doctors reassured me was never life-threatening. The rhythm that I was going into was atrial fibrillation, so ultimately what happens is the top two chambers of your heart start to quiver instead of beating functionally, and blood doesn't efficiently move through your heart. So it can cause quite a lot of exercise related difficulties, which was quite hard for me to deal with as someone who lives and breathes running and who has my identity very highly wrapped up in the sport. So I had to learn how to, for that period of time when I was navigating that uncertainty, how to find happiness outside the sport, and to lean on my teammates and coaches and parents who were all extremely helpful throughout the whole process. I was fortunate enough to find a doctor back home in Massachusetts from Mass General who suggested I get a procedure called an ablation in July 2018 after months of deliberation and trying to talk to experts, especially here at Stanford too. They were very helpful. I decided to go through the procedure because although there was some risk involved in it, I felt like I hadn't gotten the most out of myself as a runner yet, and quite frankly, the situation was a little hopeless at the time because I wasn't seeing a whole lot of progress, and I had a lot of confidence in this doctor. So we went through with the procedure. It worked very well, and I had to take a month very easy. Ultimately, it sounds like a substantial procedure. It was relatively uninvasive, but I did have to be careful building back up again, which is the hardest part, just having to hold myself back even when I felt better, and it was encouraging to see that I was no longer getting the heart palpitations. From August until November, I had a goal in my mind that I wanted to be, I had been 16th at NCAAs the year prior. The buildup had not been as ideal, but I wanted to be better if I could, for myself and for my team. It was a challenging process because I couldn't derive a lot of confidence from the work I'd put in because I had to substantially scale back my volume and my intensity for some period of time. So I went into the season not as fit as I expected to, but I had to just kind of stay emotionally stable and keep building the whole time. And I mean, I got very lucky. Everything clicked. The procedure worked well. I was feeling like my old self. The season culminated with third place finish at Pac-12s and then a 13th place finish at NCAAs. So it was definitely a bit of a validating moment for me, something that I wouldn't wish that anyone else has to go through, but it was, I also recognize that I am at a great place where there are great doctors and people, especially my coaches and parents, that were able to help me through it, and I think I'm a better person because of it. In terms of what I know about the body now, I think about this all the time. I've definitely learned a lot. I'm very interested in applying sports science, not just knowing the biology and the physiology, but also thinking how can we manipulate variables to make better athletes, and that goes also for psychology. I'm also interested in that too. There are things that I've certainly applied to my own training that I've learned through evidence-based research that I've applied, and I'll chat with my teammates about sometimes. But I think more broadly speaking, I've also learned that there's a lot of great things about exercise science and that you can quantify, but there's also this unquantifiable ability of what the human mind can achieve that goes beyond numbers and measurements. So that's a little bit more of the fuzzy side of the sciences and the psychology, but I think it's underappreciated. And I think that what I've learned is that the mind is a tool that can make or break you, and if you learn how to harness it and don't let it rule you, then you can achieve a lot. I would say a few things about my future. One, I have no idea what it holds, and I'm okay with that. I like to be opportunistic, like I said. I don't like to make up my mind too early. I like to kind of evaluate my options, and that's what I plan on doing in the spring when I'm going to leave Stanford, is just kind of evaluate my options and try and take the opportunity that is going to be the best for me at that point in time, and hopefully put me in a position where I can make a positive impact on other people, whether that be in running or coaching or going to school for longer. I don't know what the future holds. One thing I will say is that my outlook on that is whatever I end up doing, I feel like I'm a constant work in progress and always trying to get better. I certainly don't think that I'm perfect or I have it all figured out. So I just like to approach every day and try and get better, try and make the people around me better, learn how to lean on others, develop close relationships with people, because ultimately I think that's what life is about. And I certainly have done that here at Stanford. And so I guess I'm excited to see what the future holds. in terms of running, because that's on my mind a lot lately, I'm actually a dual citizen with Norway. My dad's Norwegian. I speak Norwegian, and I've spent a good chunk of my summers there when I was younger. So I have the opportunity to try and run for a Norwegian team. I haven't fully explored that opportunity yet, but it's certainly something I'm going to consider at the end of this year to see if I can try and run for a world championship or maybe even one day an Olympic team. But we'll see. I think if that never happens and I find a fulfilling job as a coach or maybe a professor or something, so be it. I think I look forward to see how it all comes together.